Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of MLS Mondays. Looks like we've got some people logging in. I'll give them a few minutes. So today's topic, which is a really, really fun title that was picked out by our compliance admin here, was "Why am I being violated?" And so many people read that subject line and was like, "What? What are they talking about?" What we're talking about today is our top MLS violations. And the reason we call it that is there are so many times where, we will send out a notification to let people know that they could be in violation. They've got a certain amount of time to fix it. And the first thing they always say is, "Why am I being violated?" And we can't help but laugh and say, "Well, you're certainly not being violated." But we do have violations here in the MLS, so it's not the wrong terminology. I will walk you guys through the rules and regs today, but again, today we're mostly focusing on the top things that, people do. And I would say for the most part, unintentionally, they do these wrong. The violations are not always something that is a malicious intent or, purposeful harm. A lot of times it's honest mistakes, or maybe, we just don't, as members, they don't get or understand what the rules are and why we have them. Looks like we've got everybody logged in though. So let's go ahead. First and foremost, I want to show you guys, before we get into the top ones, where to find the resources around the rules and regulations. Maybe you are new to our association, maybe you're just getting back into the game, trying to understand what you can and can't do in the MLS. And share here. Our rules and regs are right here on our dashboard. So when you log in, most of the time you guys log in and you come right to the first button right here, which is the MLS. However, if you scroll on down, the rules and regs are posted right here. It will take you into a link on the website. So you can also find these on our website, rpcra.org. This will break down why behind the rules, what the point of the rules is. But if you click down here at the bottom, the rules and regs button, it will open up to our rules and regs. So this is a 46-page document for you guys. You can go through, there's table of contents. If there's a certain area in specific that you're struggling with, that you want to look through, we'll open these back up a few times here today. But those are going to be the rules where you can find them so that you can read through them if you want to. And it's funny, I've heard a lot of people lately, especially like our younger generations, the people who are just getting into real estate for the first time. They're like, "Oh man, I don't like legal jargon. I don't like to read rules and regulations." And I'll fall asleep, and they're plugging it into AI and having it like, summarize it for them. So that's another tactic that you could go with as well. So let's hop into all of our top ones here today. So, like I said, our compliance admin here at Florida Gulf Coast MLS has gone through and combed through and created a lovely list of all of our top violations that we have here at Florida Gulf Coast MLS so that we can go through them so that you don't make the same mistakes that everybody else is making. And I left my notes on my desk. So let's get into these. So before I get into the top ones, I do want to point out, because I think I would be remiss if I did not point this out. Not on the list is the commission and compensation violation. Because it's not one of the top ones. Thankfully, it's not one of the top ones, which means the ones that we see the most. However, what it is top in is the amount of fine that you will get for a commission violation. Commission violation is $1,000. And it's because we have to take it very, very seriously due to the NAR lawsuit settlement that's happened over a year ago now. We cannot have commissions in the MLS. If we do, we risk the possibility of our MLS being shut down. So we take it very, very seriously here. So do not put commissions and compensation in the MLS anywhere. There is no box for it, but again, do not try to put it anywhere. Don't put it in the comments. Don't put it in the confidential remarks. Don't hide it anywhere. Don't get cute. Don't try to, say it without saying it. You will get violated for it. So with that, let's hop into the top things that we see here in our MLS. First and foremost, the thing that we see on a daily basis is the missing property ID. Now, this is required here at Florida Gulf Coast MLS. You'll see this is the input screen under the general tab where the property ID goes. Whenever you are pulling in a property from the property appraiser's office, whether it's the Lee County property appraiser, Collier County property appraiser, when you search your property and you have it fill it in for you, it fills in about like 25 or 26 different fields. It puts that PID in there for you. There is no need to take it out. There are, of course, some special, very, very few, far in between, some special situations where maybe you're splitting out the parcels, you don't have a PID yet, you've got very specific situations where the PID maybe hasn't fully formed over from the property appraiser's office. So you can click unlisted PID yes to leave that blank if you have a very, very specific special situation. But in those instances, you do need to put in the public description, the PID that it was associated. Let's say you're separating out a property and it doesn't have its own PID yet. You need to put in the previous PID in the property description. You need to, elaborate somehow with some kind of conjoining PID so that the property can properly be found, marketed for, and as with any of these roles, this is for clear transparency of, the parcel, what's connected with it. It's all about, the data being accurate so that people are getting the full picture of that property. So please, please, please put in your PIDs. And if you don't have one or you're struggling with it, feel free to call us. We've got 5 people here on phones that will be able to answer you and help walk you through that process. If you're kind of in a situation where you're like, I don't know if this is right, we're always here to help you out. Secondly, promotional information in the remarks. So this can be a plethora of things. First and foremost, the biggest no-no is your phone number, your name, your web address, the company name, anything that promotes it directly to you. So it's important to remember that the multiple listing service is a data tool, not exactly a marketing tool. It is meant to have all of the hyperlocal data here for the local market of all of the properties. It's not meant to be a recruiting tool or a marketing tool, right? So you have to put yourself in the consumer's shoes and in the other realtor's shoes. If there was somebody who was constantly marketing across the MLS, would you want to put your consumers into the MLS? Would you want to plug your buyers in there if they were just going to be, taken away by another brokerage or another realtor? Also, if you're a broker, would you want your agents partaking in the MLS if people were just constantly out there putting out brokerage information and recruiting? It makes for, a situation with any kind of antitrust. But first and foremost, the reason that we say this is because it is a data tool. So we want all of these fields to be used for what their highest and best use is and what they're intended for. And it's not for marketing, it's not for recruiting, it is for data. So do not put anything brokerage related, phone number related, anything, even, you think about like the call to actions. We see this all the time, and it is a word that we have filtered to look for in the MLS. It'll say, call me today for a showing, or call me today to put in any kind of an offer. And that is considered marketing in the remarks. And while we're talking about the remarks, I do want to point out, while it's not promotional, it is important. We'll go through a lot of different fields today about like what the highest and best use is, but we've been seeing a huge uptick in it recently. Do not put that the property is vacant in the property information. So this field here, the property information, this is what feeds out to the public on the IDX feeds. It is a huge safety issue, and you'll continue to see if you use the word vacant, you put it out there, you'll see that there's a lot of problems marking a property vacant. First and foremost, for theft. Secondly, it makes it hugely open to fraud because then your fraudsters love to list it for rent on Craigslist or anywhere that they can and try to collect applications because there's nobody there to verify at the property that it is the owner or isn't the owner. So you're just opening up a wormhole there. So aside from promotional information, please do not put vacant in the property information. All right, secondly, missing HOA fees. This is something we see a lot. And just because you don't know what the HOA fees are does not mean that you don't get to put zero or that you get to put zero in there. If your property is marked that there is a mandatory HOA and that it belongs to a HOA up here, it's going to require that you put in those HOA fees. And if you don't, I can promise you the moment you plug in a community and you don't put you put no for HOA and you put zero for all these HOA fees, I can promise you somebody will report you in 5 minutes, and it'll be somebody that lives inside of that community. So we see this a lot. They're like, well, I don't know what they are, and I was waiting for them to get back to me. Well, don't make it live until you have that information. And I also would say a good rule of thumb, make sure that you read the HOA docs, you have the correct fees. We see a lot of people put the incorrect fees, and it is not the correct answer to say, well, Sally Seller over there on her listing put those numbers. I just copied it from her listing. It's never a good thing. You've got a lot of properties that will be in, one development, but then there's different subdevelopments with different fees, and you don't know if you're copying from the right building or not, and you don't know that the other realtor did their job correctly either. So double check your HOA fees, and also make sure that you're putting them in there if it belongs to an HOA. I know it's crazy to think that this is at the top of the list, but it is. Another hot button here is not allowing showings. So the rule in our MLS is that when a listing is listed, it has to be able to be shown within those first 48 hours. And the reason that we have that rule is because subsequently we have a second rule that states that a listing that can't be shown for more than 3 consecutive days needs to be withdrawn. So we get it. People have birthday parties, they have family coming into town, they're doing things where they can't allow showings. So you have up to 3 days where you can say, hey, no showings. You can block it out on, if you're using showing time, you can block it out. You can put that in the confidential remarks for the other realtors to see, up to 3 days. But we don't allow you to use those 3 days in the first 3 days of that listing, right? So don't put it on the market and say no showings for 3 days. It has to be able to be shown those first 48 hours of listing it. And that is to keep people from trying to pocket a listing and not having a fair and open market to the rest of the consumers who would like access to that property. We saw too many people that were utilizing the rule of 3 days as a loophole when they were listing it. So remember to double check and have that conversation up front with your sellers, right? Hey, like, are you guys expecting at any point where we're going to need to withdraw this listing because you don't allow for showings? Do you have family coming into town? What are your plans? It's a good way to figure out where they're at in the process. All right, next is incorrect addresses. So this is kind of like a twofold thing. Most of the time, again, this is accidental. Sometimes you're just going to fat finger the address, as we call it, right? You hit the wrong button, you hit the wrong number, and it's unintentional. But then there also is the mistake. Sometimes people will plug in the entire address on this line right here where it says street number. They just start typing the whole address. It's important to know that the entire address is dissected out. The street number, that's only the number, the pre-direction, the street name, the street type. And that's the other thing, street name, a lot of people will put Northwest 21st Place, when in fact, Northwest is the pre-direction, the street name is only 21st, and the street type is the directional here. So it could be place, terrace, circle, whatever that might be. Post direction. So some of your addresses and say, instead of saying Northwest 21st Place, they would say 21st Place Northwest. We see that a lot out in like Lehigh, where the directional is at the end of the address. If there is a unit, apartment number, condo number, whatever that might be, that goes here, city and state. The reason that the address is dissected out completely is because of the way it goes into the feeds. All right. So every website that is out there that is digesting our information digests it differently. And we want to make sure that that address in every little piece of it is labeled out properly so that they can display it correctly on their sites as well. This all has to do with data mapping. But also it helps so that when people are searching, right, if you were to just type the address out completely, we would get some weird spaces, we would get some weird digits, some different things. If everybody types out addresses differently, but this is to make sure that there is uniformity in that address for the data feeds and for searching capabilities. The other thing is, if you're separating out a parcel, maybe you're selling two parcels together. We see that a lot. They'll try to put the more favorable parcel. Just make sure that you have the information in here correctly. If you are selling for example, a piece of property and the conjoining lot next to it, and there are two different addresses, well, you put it in under residential, you need to use the residential address. If you're putting it in under lot and land, you need to use the lot and land address so that it's properly connected to that property. And if it is required that both be sold together, do make sure that you put that in the remarks in the property description along with the associated PID, right? Because you can only put one PID in there. So if you're requiring other PIDs be attached to this residential property, make sure that you put those in the property remarks as well. But just really, really, really pay attention when you're putting in that address, because there's too many times where we see people make that honest mistake. And especially where if you do a search in the beginning to pull this data in and it pulls in 25 fields, and let's say I accidentally put in 2835 Northwest 21st Place, right? It's an easy mistake to make. I click it, I pull it in. Well, it just pulled in the wrong PID. It's pulled in the wrong lot sizes, owner name, legal description. All those fields that come in are now wrong. And there's no going back. And once this is syndicated out, it's syndicated out. I mean, yeah, we'll go back, we'll fix the address. You'll have to fix all 26 boxes, but you're really missing that window of opportunity, because the new listing that just got emailed out to all the potential buyers was 2835, right? It all the wrong information, the wrong listing, probably not a property they're even interested in when they could have been interested in yours. So, we love putting on new listings because it gets sent out to all of these consumers who are plugged into the MLS. It goes out to all of the syndication sites and anybody who's searching on those syndication sites, whether it's Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, any of those things, right? They get an alert, there's a new property. Well, all of that potential goes out the window if you've listed the wrong property, because you'll go back, you'll change it, and this MLS number will be updated to read 2836. But what everybody saw initially, right? First impressions matter. What everybody saw initially was the wrong property. So address is most important in listing that property. All right. Untimely status changes. This is another one of our biggest violations. I know that we live in Southwest Florida, and the common joke is that the Florida real estate market is so different because we're so laid back and we're on island time and we dress casually and everything is just vacation style. Well, when it comes to real estate and data, and it comes to your contracts, that should not be the case, because people rely heavily on the statuses and on the data that you plug into the MLS that you are responsible for as that listing realtor. So you are required to update any changes in the MLS within 3 business days, and sales need to be reported within 24 hours. So a lot of times the biggest complaint that we get, and people will report you, right? You'll have an active listing. It'll go under contract. You forget to go out and change it because, you're doing 100 different deals and you're super successful, which is wonderful. But then somebody will go to request a showing on it, and they've got buyers who are really interested. They're like, "Oh my God, this is our dream home. This is the one. This is the only one we want." Well, lo and behold, it went pending 6 days ago, but you never updated the MLS. Let me tell you what, they'll be very, very upset with you because they've got buyers who are brokenhearted over it. People really, really rely on that data and that information. So it's really important that you change those statuses in a timely manner, because those will be a fine if you do not change it in time. Misleading information. I feel like if you've ever looked at the MLS and wondered what the heck was this realtor doing, you've definitely had one of these faces on the screen. Because there are a lot of times where we look at a listing and we're like, what were they thinking? And we're going to go through a different category, which is incorrect data, but misleading information really has to do with sometimes, I give people the benefit of the doubt too much. We just get a little too creative, right? We're really, really passionate about the property we're listing and we're trying to give it like the best foot forward, but sometimes we get a little bit too out of that box where that listing exists. And we kind of over exaggerate that property. And that's where we get into this category of misleading information. So a lot of times I think we see this mostly within the photos, rather than the information. And my favorite one is, somebody who was just trying to make a pun, but we had a lot of people really upset over it. They had like a retention pond or a lake that was in behind the house, very pretty view. But here in Florida, those lakes are very small, and they had a massive blue whale jumping out of the lake, and it said on the picture like whale of a deal. Well, it's misleading. There's no whales. There's no whales in the lake, right? That one's a good one to laugh at, but you can see where we're getting with this. There's a lot of times where, we're just trying our best to put that information out there, and it's not really something that's connected to the property, right? There's a lot of times where we'll mark, oh, well, the community has golf. This property doesn't have access to it, but the rest of the community does. So I marked it because I want people to see my property when they look up golf. Well, if your property doesn't have it and it doesn't come with the price of that home, it's misleading, right? So just think about that when you're doing your photos, right? You can enhance your photos slightly. Everybody photoshops nowadays, but if the grass is brown, don't make it green, right? So just keep those things in mind. That's what we see a lot of, because let me tell you what, again, that'll be the first thing that people report when they show up at that property, and what they saw is not what they're getting. They'll be pushing that violation button. All right, next up is branded virtual tours. We talked about branding in the property remarks, which is a lot more popular than this one, but this one still makes the list. So you're on your general tab right here towards the bottom, which a lot of people have a hard time figuring out where the virtual tour links go. I know they're kind of in the middle of nowhere, but your virtual tour links, you've got two options to put two different ones here. They have to be unbranded. Same thing we talked about before with the property description. We do not want people to be recruiting or pulling clients away in the MLS. So the branded virtual tours, same concept. And that's why when you do like purchase photo packages, virtual tour packages, they always send you a link that's branded and unbranded, because these photographers know that you have to put unbranded in the MLS. Then you take your branded one, you put those out on social media and put those on your email and do whatever you want with the, all of your other stuff, but the unbranded ones are what belong here in the MLS. So just keep that in mind. Realtor signs and photos. This is a very, very common mistake. When I practiced, I made it myself several times because we don't even think, we don't even see it, but it is considered branding in the MLS and the photos. So if you are taking professional photos, make sure either one, schedule your sign to go up after the photos, or two, ask your photographer to make sure that they take some good shots of the front of the home without your sign in it. If you ever end up with the unfortunate mistake or fact that all of your front photos have a sign in it, well, you can white it out, right? It's not just about the sign, it's about the branding. If we can see your logo, if we can see your face, if we can see your contact information, it's branding in the MLS. And it's a very, very popular one. Again, just purely because you order the sign to go up, you order the photos, sometimes you're not even there, and then you just post them all. You're not doing it intentionally. We get it. But then, it kind of gets out of hand with where we had situations in the past, a lot of people doing it intentionally, where the for sale sign was like the first photo and it was their face and their logo, and it was all branding. So be sure to check your photos before listing them out in the MLS. Next up is assignment of contract. And this is a popular one. I know we've got a lot of people who are very passionate about this. So if you mark that your property is assignment of contract, right? If you don't know what assignment of contract is, it's a different type of sale where you are selling off a contract that is already in play. If you need more information on assignment of contract, talk to your broker or legal hotline. However, if you are doing this, do make sure that you're using the correct status type up here. Right under status type, we have resale, we have known damage, we've got new construction, you've got all these different things up here under status type. But when you mark it assignment of contract, then you need to make sure that you're using this verbiage we have down here, which is in this little box in the maroon box down below. This is right out of your rules and regulations. It's clipped right out of there. So the verbiage that's required for assignment of contract is, this is an assignment of contract which must close on, you're going to put the date there that matches the other contract, and it would say at, and then you have to disclose what title company it's closing with. Okay, so those are required verbiages for your assignment of contracts. Auction properties is another one. So there are a lot of requirements around auction properties. Let me pull up our rules for you really quick. So this is the auction property section here. There are a list of details that you have to provide in the property remarks if it is an auction property. What I do want to tell you guys is your board of directors, your MLS committee, your MLS board, and your board of directors have all approved new auction fields that will be going in within the next month. So right now you have a field in the MLS that says, is this an auction property? And you click yes or no. Pretty simple, right? But then you have to disclose all of this stuff, and there's a lot of things that are required. What we've done now is added in each of these things as a field, so that you'll be able to use it. Some of them are drop downs, some of them are fill in the blanks, they're options. So from now on, moving forward, when you click, is this an auction property? Yes. You'll have several other fields to fill out, which will make your life a little bit easier, first and foremost, right? So you're not getting violated for not having the correct information out there. But also, it'll make it easier if you're on the buyer end, or if you're trying to pull comps for another auction property. You can filter by these certain types of fields. What type of an auction is it? When's the auction date? Who's hosting the auction? Those types of things. You'll be able to dig into more information about auction properties instead of just saying simply auction property, yes or no. The more data you have, the better your CMAs are, the better your searches for your buyers are. It really benefits everybody. I just want to double check. I don't see that we have any questions yet, but if you do have questions along the way, there is a Q&A box down at the bottom that you can use. All right, next up is highest and best. So a lot of us use this tactic in trying to create multiple offer situations. You would, today is the 4th. Oh, it's May the 4th for any of our Star Wars fans. So if you were to list a property today and you say, hey, we want highest and best by Friday, and you would put the date out there, you put the information, please send in highest and best, and you give a timestamp, right? You are allowed to do highest and best verbiage inside of the MLS. Make sure you don't say to contact you or put an offer in with you. They are, we want to encourage them to stay with their their realtor. However, it is a rule that if you're going to put this in the MLS, you must remove it by the time that the highest and best was due. So if it's past highest and best, and we see this a lot, right? It'll be like, today's the 4th and highest and best was due April 21st. And it's like, what are you doing? You update your highest and best, or you simply take it out. So do keep up to date with your highest and best verbiage. Where does the verbiage for assignment of contract go? In remarks. Yeah, it goes in your confidential remarks. So the information about how to submit it, and all of that for the other realtors, it needs to go in the confidential remarks. But here in the next month for auction, we're going to get the new fields, but assignment of contract, the verbiage is also confidential remarks. So both of those are confidential remarks. It's a good question though. Thank you. All right, next up is open houses. We have a specific section for open houses, so we require that you use that section. People try to post it out everywhere possible, and it becomes almost like it crosses the line of promotional information in the MLS, which is why we have this rule that you cannot post open houses in the property description. It needs to go in the open house section, right? So when you go to input, you can edit any of the fields, or there's specifically a button for open houses. It'll open up to this where you plug in the open house type, right? Is it public or is it for broker only? The timing, if you want to put any remarks in, and if there will be refreshments, right? These fields, the open house date and the times, all feed out to all syndication sites. As long as you have it marked public. If you don't have it marked public, and if you didn't mark it active, there's an active button over here. It's not going to go out yet. So you can start to plug these in and put them in and then make them active as needed. Some sites will take the remarks and refreshments, but most of them are, like Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, things like that. They're mostly just taking in the dates and the time. So it's dependent on what that website has to offer. But we do this because it's highly important that you, again, put the information where it's intended to go so that it syndicates out properly where it needs to go. So if you, just put it in the public remarks and you haven't put it in the open house section, and then you're marketing yourself, it becomes this whole like hornet's nest of, are they promoting themselves or are they promoting the open house? So at the end of the day, just put it in the open house section. That way it properly goes out to the syndication sites properly. All right, next up we have willful misuse. Now, we've kind of alluded to this a few times when we've talked about the other fields, and I say, well, sometimes people just make a mistake, or they're trying to do this, or they're trying to do that. I commonly refer to it as trying to fit a square into a circle, which you can see in this image here. You're trying to use a field for what it's not intended for, because you're trying to do something that's not intended for the MLS. And a lot of times it has to do with marketing, it has to do with data that we don't use or collect. So if there is a section or an input field that, where you can type whatever you want into it, please only use it for what it's intended for. Don't be putting your websites or your branding or your marketing, in any of the fields where they're not intended to be. Let me hop over here and see. Again, adding hyperlinks to public remarks. Most of those belong in confidential, if it's for applications or things like that. Um, Adding gate codes, door codes, and all of that, safety procedures behind that, obviously, but that's not what those fields are intended for either. You have those fields available to you in Showing Time and other, maybe if you use a different showing platform, where it will double check and approve that people are realtors and double check their appointment, and then you can confirm them. But you don't want to just be putting out gate codes to the public. That makes us the vessel for property fraud, and we don't want to be the vessel for somebody getting robbed or property fraud or anything like that. But just think it through. When you're looking at a field, just because it's blank and available doesn't mean you should just do what you want with it. If you have something that you need to put in the MLS and you don't see a proper field for it, call us up and ask us. We'll let you know, hey, actually there is a section for you. It goes over here, or we'll let you know why something isn't allowed in the MLS. And again, I will bring up compensation and commission not allowed in the MLS. We used to, way back in the day, right? All MLSs had a field for commission and compensation. We took that out. Willful misuse would be putting compensation in any field that you can find, because it's not allowed in the MLS anywhere at all, property description or anything like that. Alrighty. Next up is rental property situations that we've come across. This is kind of a grouping of different things. So the biggest one is updating dates of availability. So we've got two sections in the rental input section. You've got annual rentals, right? Those are your long-term rentals. And then you have short-term rentals, which are like your vacation rentals. And we see this the most in vacation rentals, but obviously it happens in annual rentals too. But updating the dates of availability, right? So if it's available in May, and then it's also available, we'll say May, June, July, August, and somebody comes along and they've just rented it out for May. Go out and take out May, because people who are like, oh crap, I need a rental right now, are searching for May. We're in May, but they need May, right? And you're like, oh no, yeah, I just didn't take that out. It's a violation for not having proper information in the MLS. They will report you. Please update as you're renting out your properties, update your availability. There's also, when it comes to the annual rentals, this falls in both categories, whether it's the dates of availability or it's the proper status change. We see all the time people will rent out the property completely. Like, it's good for the year. They've got an annual rental and it's still active in the MLS. And where the problem comes into play is not just upset consumers because they fell in love with the house, but if you've got a property, and I bring this up because we've had it happen here. It went to an ethics trial. It's not just MLS anymore, right? It's real estate practices. We had a realtor who left a property on the MLS and it was marked vacant. Go and show, automatically approve people for showings. They did not update the status on that property and it was rented. The people moved in. They had a dog. Then another realtor comes along thinking this house is vacant, sets it up, and it has a door code because it has it mounted onto the door, not just a super box, but a door code. They go to the house, they type in the door code, they open it up, the dog goes running, and consequently gets hit by a car and did not make it. So now you've got, really, really upset people who have lost their dog. You've got people who thought that the house was available. You've got a whole mess. It's important to update your MLS regularly. I know that you guys are going in 100 different directions, but just keep it top of mind. The other thing to keep in mind with updating your rental properties is that each listing in the MLS is identified by a single address. So if you have a property and you're trying to put it in there multiple times, you can't. Like if you're trying to put it in there for May, you're trying to put it in there for June. No, you need to put it in there for the designated months. And if you also have a parcel, it's intended for properties with a PID. It's not intended for apartments. It's intended for rentals of condos and things like that. So if you've only got one PID, you might want to call the MLS and make sure that you're properly putting this in to the MLS. It's also important to keep in mind that somebody who is renting out their garage or renting out a room or renting out, like, I don't know, they've got a shed out back. Those are dwellings and we don't list them in the MLS because it has to have a single address and they have to have access to that PID. You are renting out the entire property. So we do not have a section right now that's just for rooms or for dwellings. So if you're putting something in the MLS, it is for that whole property. All right. Now we're going to get into incorrect data. And I have a lot of screens here for you guys to go through because incorrect data tends to be the place where we spend the most time. I know we've put it at the end here, doesn't mean it's at the bottom of the list because most of what our compliance admin spends her day doing is chasing after correct data that's been reported as incorrect. And we find that most of the time, the categories that this lands into is just somebody who maybe isn't educated about the property. Like they're like, oh, I had no idea. Or they don't know what the field's intended use is. So we're going to kind of do speed dating on the incorrect data here. First and foremost, private pool. We have this reported all of the time because private pool is intended that it is attached to that actual physical property. When you look at it on the property appraiser's office, the pool is in their property line. Private pool does not mean, oh, the community who has 300 residents have a private pool. There is a separate section for that. Under amenities for communities, there is community pool. That way people can filter by it if needed. And the reason that designation, the difference between those is so important is because there are people who will also go to communities and they want a private pool, meaning, hey, I want to move to Pelican Preserve and they've got a community pool that's a couple blocks away, but I want my own pool in my backyard. So make sure if you're marking private pool, it doesn't mean private to the community. It means private to that dwelling, connected to that dwelling only. Okay. Lot type is very, very important. You need to make sure that it matches what is on the Lee County Property Appraiser's office or Collier County, Lee County, whatever, the property appraiser's record. It needs to match. Not what the future use is, not what you could do, not what you could file for. No, what is the use of that lot type? And you're going to find as we go through the correct, incorrect, and correct data sections here that I'm constantly going to tell you it needs to match the property appraiser's office. If there is something incorrect in the property appraiser's office, because they're not perfect, right? Or maybe you're filing, there's construction and you've added on a third bedroom, whatever it might be, you need to provide those documentations for it to us as well. All right, next up, housing for older persons. We see this field getting missed a lot. We do have it as a required field, but I think a lot of people don't understand. So 55 and older, 65 and older, whatever it might be, if there is a deeded restriction on the age for that property, because we have a lot of those communities here in Southwest Florida, make sure that you mark housing for older persons, yes. If there is no restriction, then you would mark it no. The reason that it says housing for older persons is that is the common terminology that's used nationwide because it also you can't just say 55 and older. There are communities where it's 55, 65, there's all these different ages. So make sure that you're properly using housing for older persons field. Next up is pet info. A lot of people skip this section. It's right there on that general tab. Are pets allowed? Is there an approval process, especially with these communities, especially with rentals? Don't just skip it because if you don't know what the information is, like how many pets, what's the poundage, what's the limit, and you just put no and they go to apply for this property, like you're on the hook when they can't bring their pet. It is also important to keep in mind that your service animals, the ESE animals aren't considered pets. We see this conversation a lot in the MLS. I would talk to your broker and I would talk to Legal Hotline if you need more information about ESA animals and service animals, but don't include that in the pet information. They are considered a service, they're not considered a pet. Year built. We see a lot of people, even though that comes right over with the property appraiser's information, a lot of people change that out because they believe that, oh, well, I renovated the whole inside of the home, so it was built last year. Wrong. You need to go by what is on the property appraiser's office, because we see it a lot, especially with, having Hurricane Ian years ago. People re-renovated their house. Well, did you completely demolish it and build a new house, or was it just renovated? Because if it was completely demolished and rebuilt, LIPA or Collier County property appraiser, they'll update the year built on there. It needs to match LIPA. Golf access is another fun one. It is important to know that golf access is something that is connected. Same for the pool rule. It has to be connected to the property. If I can't walk out my backyard into like the canal or to the golf or whatever that is accessed, connected to that property and access the golf, then it's not golf access. There are different options inside of amenities for the communities. If the community has a boat dock and the community boat dock can access the golf, then that is a different rule. All right, golf type. This is also another hot button. It goes into the pools and the golf access for GULF and also GOLF. So golf type, we've added in over the past year a lot of different golf types so that people can filter it out. So make sure you pay attention to not only what your community has and what type of golf they have to make sure you're clicking off the right boxes. Pay attention to what it is that your property has access to, because you'll see in the golf communities here, there are a lot of properties where it's like, well, these properties like are mandatory package, but you can buy like further away and not have it packaged. It needs to be reflected on what's in the price. Is that property, even if the community itself has golf, right? Does that property have access to it? Does that property have the golf bundle with it or the golf package? Or is it just, do they get treated as like public access? You need to ask these questions of your homeowners, look at the docs, figure out where that property lies, so that you can make sure that you're putting in the right information. Garage spaces, for whatever reason, constantly input incorrectly. I know that if it's a 2-car garage, but it's a little bit bigger than normal, we all want to put that it's a 3-car garage. Again, look at your property appraiser's sheet, make sure that it is correct. The number of bedrooms, same thing. A lot of people want to mark dens as bedrooms, but please, use the little question mark bubble that we have next to those fields. It has in there what the builder code is for the difference between a bedroom and a den, right? The closet, the door, the window, there's all of these designations. So make sure that you are putting in what the property appraiser's office has. If they have it wrong, then the homeowner who maybe was just trying to get out of paying a little extra in taxes by having only 3 bedrooms instead of converting that den to a 4th bedroom, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too. So you've got to update it in LIPA if you're gonna update it inside of MLS. You can't have mismatching information for the bedrooms there. All right, geocodes. We commonly see people putting in the wrong geocodes. If you use the map feature in the MLS and you add over layers, you can add over the geocode map. The geocodes seem to confuse a lot of people. Like we get zip codes, we get subdevelopments and developments, but geocodes is a sticking point for a lot of people. But you can add those, whether you're using MLS or you're using Realist, you can add the geocode map over the map and then zoom into your property and see exactly where it lies if you need to pull it up. Typically, it will fill out automatically for you if you've pulled in the data from the property appraiser's office. Subdevelopment and subdivisions and development. Make sure that you're putting in the proper ones. If your property is not in a development or a subdivision, then you simply put the city, right? So let's say you're out in Northwest Cape, not inside a community. Your subdivision and development would both just say Cape Coral, Cape Coral. If it's over here in Fort Myers and not in a community, which is almost rare, Fort Myers, same kind of thing. If it's in if you're listing something that is like outside of our jurisdiction, right? Like let's say you're listing a property that's up in the Panhandle and you want to put it in our MLS as well, you certainly can. You're allowed to put in anything in the state of Florida in our MLS. But we don't have all of those subdivisions and developments because that's not our jurisdiction. So what you would put in there is not applicable. That's the option that we have for you guys. If you don't see your city, or if you don't see your subdivision or your development, you're going to check off not applicable. The other fun one that we get a lot of confusion on is rear exposure, right? It's either north, northwest, south, southwest, southeast. Like you have all the directionals in there. Pull open your property on the map. North is up, south is down. Look and see where the rear exposure for that property is. There are a lot of people that actually use that filter. I hear it all the time when people are doing input. They're like, oh my gosh, does this even matter? Yes, the direction of the sun matters. You're selling sunshine here in Southwest Florida, and people who are searching are filtering by that a lot, especially those with pools. They want to know it's important to them. All right, next up is building type. So do make sure that you are choosing the correct building design, whether it is single family, condo, townhouse, anything like that. It's also important, it ties into the next one, which is listing type, which is we've got several different sections, right? So there's residential resale, residential rental, commercial, boat dock. But the ones that kind of get confused the most are residential and residential income properties. So your residential is single family, condos, townhouses, manufactured homes. I don't think I forgot anything, but where people get confused the most is the residential income properties are where you're going to have, I think I'm getting a Teams here. So your duplexes, your quadplexes, things like that are, in a separate category. So you're going to want to make sure that you go ahead and put them in the correct category. And you'll notice when you go in to put in the residentials that the properties aren't in there. Sorry, guys, we're really glitching a little bit here. That your your quadplexes, your duplexes, things like that are going to be in the other category. So where does the verbiage for, oh, we already did this question. All right. On to the next one, contract statuses. So you've got 3 different types of new construction status, and it is pre-construction, under construction, and new construction. So pre-construction is where you have the permit, the approved permit, and you can provide the permit, but you have not broken ground yet. Then there is under construction. That means you are currently the ground's broken, you're under construction, you're working on it, but you don't have a CO yet for that whole process. Once you get the CO, then you can put it as new construction. And new construction means you have the CO, the process is complete, but no one has lived in it yet. We have a lot of people who will, somebody will move in for a couple months ago, you know what, not for me, and then go to sell it. And let's say they moved in 2026, it's still 2026. We have a lot of people that still try to put new construction. It's not new construction anymore when somebody's lived in it. But those are all under your status types. And you do, if you're representing a new construction builder, do need to make sure that you're changing that status out with the process, because people are filtering and searching by those statuses based on their timeline. There are some people who can't wait for it to be built. There are some people who want to be at the beginning process of it being built. And that's why it's so important of whether you're doing pre-construction, under construction, or new construction. All right. Status type, that goes right back into whether it is resale. We talked before about assignment of contract. We've talked about the new construction statuses, but it's also important to remember the other statuses in there. So the one that we see the most, for example, is known damage. That is a field that we put in after Hurricane Ian so that people could filter out. First and foremost, your investors who are looking for a fixer-upper love that status. But second off, you don't have people calling you upset going, oh my gosh, I didn't know that this house was completely condemned. Hello, did you look at the pictures? No. But it's also important to remember with the known damage, we get this question a lot. Well, yeah, it was damaged, but then we completely renovated it. That's a resale. It doesn't need to be marked known damage. known damages, it's currently damaged, it needs to be fixed, like it's a fix, it's, we like to think of it as a fixer upper special category. The other category in status type that you can utilize is land value only. And the reason that we have this, obviously, there's an entire category for vacant land in the MLS, but if the property has a dwelling on it, it's considered residential. It's not vacant land. It doesn't go under lot and land. So if you look at the property appraiser site, if it's marked vacant land, great, it can go in under lot and land. But if it is marked like residential or marked that it has a dwelling on it, even if the dwelling's been completely damaged, completely demolished, it's gone. You're going to put it in residential and then you're going to mark it land value only, right? Because maybe the property needs to be taken off of it or it needs to be recategorized. But that way you are being fully transparent with, hey, it is deemed a residential property according to the property appraiser's office. However, we're only selling it for the land value there. Next up is the mobile versus manufactured home. So we talked about this, that in our residential category, you've got single family condos, townhomes, and manufactured homes. The confusing part for a lot of our agents is the mobile homes versus manufactured homes. And no matter what you want to call it or categorize it as, at the end of the day, what you want to remember in your head is the property has, like the physical dwelling on the property has to be attached to the PID. So like your mobile homes, it's just the land, and most of the time they're paying lot rent. They don't even own land. Whether they own the land or not, though, is the property attached to it. Because your mobile homes a lot of times have a VIN instead of a PIN, right? They have a vehicle identification number instead of a property identification number. And the vehicle identification number is an entirely different system, is entirely different licensing, it's entirely different like closing, like that. We are selling real estate inside of the MLS. We are not selling vehicles inside of the MLS. So unfortunately, a lot of times people go to list their mobile homes that have VINs and not PINs because they just think, oh, it's like, I see plenty of manufactured homes in the MLS. So make sure that when you look it up in the property appraiser's office, the land and the dwelling on top of it are both attached to that PIN so that you can make sure you can sell it in the MLS. You can certainly, if it was made for mobile homes and you were just selling the lot, you could put it in under lot and land and disclose it, but it's not considered a manufactured home. All right, so that is the speed dating of all of our incorrect data. And it is all of the top violations that we have here in the MLS. If you guys have any other questions, you can type them down below real quick. But like I said, if you come across a situation you're wondering, is this right? Or should I? Or I don't know. Definitely, call us, email us. We're here to help you guys out through that process. And then you can also open up those rules and regs. All of the fines and all the different violations that I went through today, if you're wondering, like, I wonder how much that would cost me. At the end of the rules and regulations, there is a chart. There's a fine chart that tells you how much everything costs, if you were to get a violation for it. Most of the time, because we're here to work with you guys, we just want correct data. We're not here to, make money off of you. I know that's, sometimes people get fined. They're like, you just want my money. We don't. We just want correct data. Most of the time, a lot of the like incorrect data or misuse, we give you 3 days to correct. Okay. So let's say like you put in there that it has a pool and somebody's like, hey, the community has a pool, but they don't have a pool. We're like, hey, you need to correct this. You get time to correct it. You don't get fined right away. Things that you will get fined right away on are commission, clear cooperation, and status changes. However, all of your other stuff, we do try to work with you and getting that data corrected. And then at the end of the day, it's just a notice. I know a lot of people get scared when they see the violation come across their email. And we want everybody to take it very, very importantly and take it seriously, but we're also here to work with you guys. So I appreciate you coming out to our MLS Monday on this Monday, and hopefully we will see you next Monday here on our MLS Monday. You guys have a successful week. Thanks.